Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and I've finally gotten around to updating the top 30 meta snapshot for update 5.0. Now, for those of you wondering off the bat why I didn't update last time for 4.9, we had the introduction of the X-Force Tier 3 Wolverine patch, and we also got the Shadowland Plus, and I thought that Shadowland Plus was really going to alter the face of this PVE side of the meta snapshot, and I thought that the little pizza icon was finally going to matter. Turns out it doesn't. No one gives a shit about Shadowland Plus because the rewards are way too RNG, and there's just not enough new variety in Shadowland to make it difficult and to make it challenging and to make it rewarding to use specific characters. And while I've done my best to build that those guides and those sheets and those videos to cover new Shadowland, it really just doesn't seem to matter who you use as long as you have strong built-up characters. There isn't really much of a difference. There isn't a big difference between characters from from stage 31 to, let's say, 61 or 71. It's really only when you get up to the upper echelons of like 80 plus that you start to really see characters struggling in terms of others being able to still dominate because they have all defense down and other specific effects. So because Shadowland really didn't have the impact that I thought it was going to have, it kind of made me a little bit less excited to cover this meta snapshot. And then I knew that Endgame was going to shake things up, and it has, and also just a prolonged exposure and a prolonged amount of time for the community to have characters like Captain Marvel has really revealed where the game stands. And so here we go. There's a ton of changes. That's why there's so many characters bolded. All the bolded characters basically moved dramatically. If they weren't bolded, they only moved a couple of spots down. If they moved up, they were automatically bolded. Just before we get started as well, I want to mention two things. One, yes, there is a 31st character, Anti-Venom. I feel so bad moving Anti-Venom off this list because he's an invaluable striker for so many of these top 10 and top 20 PVE characters, but he just doesn't fit on this list anymore. There's too many good PVE characters in the game, so he just gets an honorable mention, and he'll basically just float here forever unless one day he becomes a god and he actually makes it into the top 30 on the merit of his own damage. Secondly, if you guys don't know how these meta snapshots work, you got to pay attention to the legend, and you also have to remember that these are my opinions and this is the way that I view the game. And this is not necessarily the word or the gospel of Marvel Future Fight. You can definitely, and you are welcome to disagree with me and go your own way, and this is just my rough guideline for where I see characters being used the most. So let's jump into, and let's start off with PvE, my favorite side of Marvel Future Fight, although I'm growing to love PvP a little bit more. We've had a lot of changes in the PvE bracket, but the top two ladies, Luna and Sharon, kind of hold fast. They're only really dethroned by Captain Marvel because of her insane damage with the iframe ignore and her 5th skill going Radiant, and just overall her damage is absolutely insane. A lot of people are giving their first and only CTP of Rage to Captain Marvel, so it is inflating her value a little bit, but she just does so well. She does every world boss, she does insane ABX damage on multiple days, she has a self-buffing leadership, and that's one of the things that I identified for the pizza for Shadowland Plus. I should actually put the plus here. The pizza is indicative of a character that either has a self-buffing leadership and or they have some sort of, crazy all defense down on one of their skills, which makes them very, very good at just melting a Shadowland stage, and or they have the ability to remove all buffs from the enemy. So that is why you see the pizza on these different characters, and that is what makes them good. Strife is pretty much the only character who doesn't have all defense down, I believe, and that is because he just has really excellent damage that you can stack with all of his skill canceling. Even with a CTP of Regen, a completely PvP build, I'm able to go into the 70s with Strife because he's just that powerful on his own, and it'll be terrifying to know or to see what happens to Strife when he gets a uniform. Anyways, moving along, Deadpool jumps up on the list as well because of his uniform and the extra all defense down. Cap skyrockets up the list with his new uniform. That all defense down 4th skill is just absolutely bonkers, and it puts him up there with Deadpool for extremely fast clear speeds because he's got that all defense down basically constantly stacked. and it's just crazy how much damage he's able to output. Thanos comes in, also really, really great PvE character. He's able to do multiple world bosses because he's got physical and energy damage. He's got all defense down on his second skill, which makes it very meta. And his tier 3 skill does, respectable damage. Mr. Fantastic, because of Captain America, takes a hit. Not as good. Still very, very good offensively, but just has no defense to speak of. No survivability. Cable, just pretty much where he's always been. Dr. Doom moving up as well. Just very good damage. And he's kind of your only option other than Victorious if you need a universal villain in place of Mr. Fantastic. Minerva, also just very, very good overall in the game, very easy to get. And she's got all defense down. She's got a very smooth 3-5 or 5-3-4 rotation, and just a very, very strong character. Victorious also gets bumped up. She can do almost any Shadowland stage because of that all defense down. She's got very wild self buffs. And she's extremely tanky for a PvE focused character because of that constant refreshing shield. I know the one you guys really want to talk about the most is right here, smack dab in the middle, Ronin. Now, Ronin doesn't have the kind of utility that some of these other characters have. He doesn't have chaining iframes or very high 70% native penetration like Quicksilver, but he just does solid damage. Even at level 60, he does damage to put him on pace with Quicksilvers and Winter Soldiers. He's very strong, and he's just very easy to play, and he's fun to play, and he looks badass as hell. He's an awesome character, and he just does his job, and he does it quite smoothly. Basically, super armor is the only thing he's really missing, but he's an excellent character, and even underbuilt, he's going to surprise and kind of overstep your expectations of him. I also moved up Human Torch a bit. He's quite, I think he's quite underrated because he's free to play, but he's very, very strong. Even though he got a nerf to his heal, he's still very easy to play. He's got iframes, he's got heals, he's got all defense down on 2 skills, and he's very good, and the potential is there for him to be even better. I also introduced Iron Man, yes, Iron Man tier 3 to the PvE meta snapshot. I know you guys want justice for Iron Man, and I have made it clear in the other video, the tier list video, that I wasn't moving him up, but I have to show love to Iron Man in some ways, in some, kind of semi-accurate way, because of the fact that his new tier 3 skill with the Endgame uniform is much stronger, and if you played him recently in World Event, you know that shit hits mega hard, just erases all the enemies on the screen. It's got a pretty decent AoE, so you gotta respect it. Sabretooth, also a first-timer on this list, a little bit trickier to play, but he's got immunity, he's got all defense down, long iframes, got the super crit rate, or the super crit damage like Victorious, so he absolutely deserves his spot on this list. His kind of Brotherhood of Mutants partner there, Juggernaut, just rounding out the list. Juggernaut's a little bit worse just because he takes a lot of ramp up with the second skill. He needs to get hit constantly, and he's not quite as good at tier 1, and his heal, while it's good and the all damage reduction is good, Juggernaut does, he doesn't have as many iframes. It's not as clean of a run, so you do have to rely on the guard hit a little bit, and he does get hit a little bit more than Sabretooth. He can definitely take hits better than Sabretooth, but Sabretooth, doesn't really need to get hit other than activating the all defense down. The rest of the list kind of plays out the way that you would expect. That the bottom, it kind of just exists there. They all kind of shifted down together a couple of spots. Ant-Man is really the only other big change here. I got rid of Magneto and Korath. Magneto just is only good for ABX at this point, so I don't really see the point of having him on this list because it's not really reflective of his overall value. It's just way overvaluing his one spot. But Ant-Man gets the rework, gets the choo-choo train, and he actually puts in work stage 50 plus World Boss Ultimate. And he can do Shadowland now with the all defense down, so he's respectable and he's got that wild survivability. But it's almost equally important to talk about PvP. I think PvP has become a lot more of a sort of rock, paper, scissors fight for a lot of players, and I think the community in general, and I may be wrong on this one, but I do think the community is focusing more on PvP now than ever. I don't know if it's because there's very enigmatic top characters that you can use, and they're fun to use, you know, being able to poke people down through iframes with Captain Marvel, or just completely decimating an entire team with Thanos. But the PvP scene has probably changed more than the PvE scene, and that's saying a lot because this shit is bolded like crazy. But Thanos retakes his claim and his throne at first place. I couldn't put Captain Marvel first on both, although I was tempted to. But this 1 and 2 is very, very close. It's a lot closer than you think. But certain characters will benefit more in certain game modes. I think Captain Marvel struggles more in 3 versus 3, whereas Thanos thrives more in 3 versus 3. He has more AoE. Captain Marvel's more of a one-on-one character. Her third skill has nice AoE, but 4 doesn't. She zones in, she locks into one character, and she kind of rides that out. And she's much more vulnerable to getting killed if she gets 2 or 3 attacks in from different characters simultaneously. So she doesn't have as good of a showing in AC and AT as Thanos will and does, because, you know, his tier 3 skill has insane damage and insane AoE, and he's got very amazing AoE on all of his skills, all defense down, etc. Strife actually moving up on this list. Now, with the, you know, increased dominance of both Deadpool and the newly minted Wolverine tier 3, it has made Strife even more powerful. And we talked about Strife recently because he is a PvP counter to Thanos, being a villain, not having as much of a damage reduction against Thanos, being able to stack all that fracture, stack the fears, incapacitation, get rid of his buffs, and just kind of lock him into place with guard break and super armor pierce. So Strife is actually a very strong character, and he's seeing play in basically all game modes. And Deadpool's right there, but he has taken a bit of a hit. Deadpool, I think, is going to continue to drop because Strife is here, and Strife can one-shot or kind of just combo down Deadpool. Thanos combos down Deadpool, and Thanos does not die to Deadpool, more importantly. And also Wolverine can easily counter Deadpool, and he doesn't die to Deadpool. So Deadpool is slipping fast in PvP because he just doesn't have enough punching power to kill these characters before they build their tier 3s, or before they build enough combo and skill canceling and fracture to just render Deadpool completely useless. Doctor Doom also moves up because for much of the same reasons as Strife does. He has that viability as a counter to Thanos, although Doctor Doom is going to struggle a lot more against Captain Marvel. Doctor Doom is good because he has long iframes on 5 and 4. Captain Marvel takes her long iframes and she fists them. She really hates long iframes, and she punishes you hard for using them with her 4th skill. So he, you know, it's a very interesting rock paper scissors. Strife and Doctor Doom can quite, you know, semi-consistently counter Thanos. Thanos counters Captain Marvel counters Strife and Doctor Doom. So it's quite interesting, and I do enjoy that kind of interplay. Wolverine, of course, for the same reason, at tier 3, very, very difficult to kill. Only a couple of characters, a few characters here at the top can actually kill him, and he's got a decent enough tier 3 skill to get off damage, a little bit better than Deadpool with the burst on his 6th skill, which does allow him to kind of punch up and sometimes sneak off kills against Thanos. Captain America, with the buff to his 4th skill, is also making a resurgence. Doctor Strange as well. The iframe, ignore, and the ability to freeze Captain Marvel and take away her buff, strip her binary, or her radiant form, sorry, allow Doctor Strange to stay just on the fringes of this meta. Now keep in mind, for the PvP list, really after like 5 or 6, there's a big drop-off. I wouldn't really put Captain America in this list, but really after these 6, there's a tremendous drop in the actual impact, whereas these characters can pretty much all solo a team. It gets a lot harder to solo a team as Doctor Strange. He's fragile. Captain America just doesn't have any other weapons besides his 4th skill and his tankiness and his stat buffs. And then, you know, from there it just gets worse. Wasp is dropping in value just because Strife is really not banned all that often, and you can just constantly use Strife and Doctor Doom. As their value goes up and they have that leadership, there's less and less of a need for Wasp, and that 10% HP is nice, but you could use Victorious for 30% HP, and that's actually really good. It's a lot better. So that's also why, you know, as Wasp falls, Victorious comes up. Victorious is a good PvP character, and then she gets even better when you combo her with Doctor Doom, and also that flat 30% is just very good and makes characters like Thanos and Deadpool and Wolverine even harder to kill. Quicksilver also drops quite a bit. Actually, I think Quicksilver took the biggest drop. He basically got shut out of Alliance Tournament, and he got shut out because of Deadpool. Deadpool is now the de facto best speed character for Alliance Tournament, and although Strife does counter Deadpool, Deadpool does a lot more damage than Quicksilver. Quicksilver basically has zero chance in hell of killing Thanos, and so because of that, and because Quicksilver also dies even faster to Wolverine than Deadpool does, there's basically no space for Quicksilver. You're either going to die to Wolverine or you're going to not kill Thanos and then die to Thanos. And so because of that, Quicksilver doesn't really have a place. You can't win timeline by timing out. If you let the timer run out, you lose. So he just doesn't have enough punching power. It's just kind of like it's a worse version of Deadpool without the persistent heal. And so because of that, he kind of just loses the value. Victorious goes up. Most of these characters are basically unchanged in the middle, kind of like the middle to end of PVE. Invisible Woman, Sentinel, Ant-Man. We'll talk about Ant-Man. Basically, yeah, he's got renewed PvP presence. He's not amazing, but you can sneak in a few wins because he's got the value of Quicksilver, which is the high base dodge, guaranteed dodge combo, but he has one power skill, one burst damage skill on 5 that can actually do quite respectable damage. Stacking the Fracture and the all defense down means that he can sneak off some kills against Deadpool. He can sneak off kills against characters that normally he wouldn't be able to kill, and that does make him a bit of a threat. Winter Soldier, and the rest of it's pretty much the same. I mean, I think the top half of PvP has been upheaved completely, but the bottom half, especially for things like Conquest, hasn't really changed much. And then I give an honorable mention here at the bottom to Shuri, because I am seeing her a lot more on PvP to kind of force villain teams to adjust and to adapt. So, you know, people using Strife, people using Doctor Doom and Victorious to try to counter Thanos or to counter each other. They're also throwing Shuri on that team, like Strife, Doctor Doom, Shuri, or Strife, Thanos, Shuri, to make it even harder to take down those villains, because they'll have reduced damage against villains to stack with their reduced damage against heroes that they already have. Colossus also does that a little bit, but he's on this list for other reasons as well. Although he hasn't really seen much play anymore in Alliance Tournament, he still has value with his leadership and his ability to reflect in Alliance Conquest, but he can also do a little bit of work in Timeline for that same reason, because he will give you reduced damage against villains to make it harder for those Thanoses and those Strifes, etc. to kill you. So let me know what you guys think of this renewed meta snapshot. What do you think is going to happen in part 2 of Endgame? How much more will this snapshot change? When should I do the next one? Hit the subscribe. And I guess that's a really cringy way of saying hit the subscribe. Anyways, smash the subscribe button, guys. Smash the like button, Twitter, Discord, etc. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.